Hello there friends, and welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. When Cassian Andor first sets up shop on Yavin, he still has one foot in Luthen's Axis network. Cassian understands that the future of the movement to overthrow the Empire now lies on Yavin 4, but he also appreciates the importance of Luthen's network, which in many ways still serves as the eyes and ears for the wider rebellion. And so when Wilman Pak arrives on Yavin with another mission from Luthen, this time an assassination for dead Ramiro, Cassian can't refuse. But while he and Wilman are filling up the U-wing, that's when the silhouette of General Davits Draven appears in the garage door, like an uninvited wife to the weekend motorcycle trip with the boys.
Find an exit plan
without a destination.
It's a personal trip.
General Draven is hurt by this. He thought him and Cassian were like a thing now, that they would sneak around the galaxy doing cool spy and assassination stuff together. But now he sees Cassian running off to hang out with another spymaster, and he doesn't even invite him along.
I don't want to have to ask you to ask me. I want you to just come up with it on your own.
To be loved and wanted by not one chiseled-jawed, brooding spymaster, but two? How did Cassian Andor become the belle of this espionage ball? I mean, maybe Draven sensed that Cassian was blessed by the Force and just wanted a share of his luck. Or at least he appreciates just how capable Cassian is. Very few people can deliver in the way he does. And that most likely is not just attributed to Cassian's skills as an operator, but all the things that Luthen and his network has taught him. No matter how you look at it, the arrival of Cassian on Yavin 4 is a gift to the Alliance. It symbolizes an evolution of the revolution. There are different stages in every movement, and as Luthen closes shop down and the Axis network dies along with him, the Alliance to restore the Republic will rise and take its mantle, and General Davits Draven must stand up and take his place. Luthen was very much like a force of nature in the espionage world. He was everywhere and also nowhere. He wore many different faces, took on many roles. To Mon Mothma, he was the accelerationist, edging her on to be more bold, to commit more fully to the movement. Whereas to Saw Gerrera, he was actually the institutionalist, the establishment player, trying desperately to control one of the rebellion's most dangerous and effective factions. To Clea, Luthen was a father. He taught her, but he also protected her. He wanted to make sure that she would be prepared for life when he was gone. To Cassian, Luthen was a mentor, a man who is sharing everything he knows because he's already walked the path that he must take. It's a brilliant performance, one of the best in Star Wars history. He is whatever the Revolution needed him to be. And in many ways, it's thanks to Luthen that the Rebellion exists. It's thanks to Luthen that General Davits Draven has a job. But now, with hundreds if not thousands of individuals involved in the movement, we can no longer just have one man running the entire show by himself, not letting anyone in on the plan until the very last minute. No, that would be chaos. That would be just one man holding all the cards in his own hand while everyone else was kept guessing. That's the Empire. To be clear, Luthen never lorded over others. Sure, he made tough decisions. He took Lonnie's freedom away from him by shooting him in the chest. He almost did the same to Cassian. And his relationship with other rebel factions could be kind of transactional at times. Like when he's trying to trade weapons to Saw in order to get him to go on a mission with Anton Krieger. I called Luthen politically flexible in one of my last videos, and I saw some disagreement, but let me clarify what I mean. Aside from his underlying goal of destroying the Empire, he was willing to deal with everyone in order to get things done. Even if it meant working with Imperials like Lonnie, Neo-Separatists like Krieger, Neo-Republicans like Maya Pei, partisans like Saw Gerrera, and of course the fantastically dressed revolutionaries like the Gorman. None of these individuals actually have anything in common. It's very unlikely they would actually work together in any way, and as we see in Rogue One, the people at that table, man, the Alliance to Restore the Republic has the same problem. And Luthen kind of was bigger than that. You know, before they even had a rebellion going on, he already understood how important it was for people to collaborate. Being able to adhere to some extremely narrow ideology is a luxury that people in a rebellion simply do not have. I mean, Luthen doesn't want to be Saw Gerrera sitting in some abandoned bunker hiding away from Imperial patrols by himself because he can't find someone who completely matches his political ideology. This is also a problem in our own world as well. Like, there are some videos where I get a little political and I'll get called a fascist and a lefty snowflake in that same video, which is a bit confusing and also kind of silly. Although, you know, I think at the extreme ends of the political spectrum, all people are very similar. Anyway, Luthen never designed his Axis network to transform into some caretaker government. He never saw himself as a future leader in any way or form. This is why, again, I say that Luthen is politically very flexible and somewhat apathetic on most issues. He sees himself as a soldier. His role and purpose is to just accelerate the galaxy towards open revolution. That's the mission. Everything else isn't important. There's really nothing more dangerous and scary than an individual who is just driven by one single thing. Like, I believe in the 90s we had like a problem with angel dust. You know, there's a lot of police footage from stuff like that. But yeah, like, Luthen isn't a drug addict, but he has those qualities that makes him very unpredictable. And this is why the establishment rebels, which is an oxymoron now that I think about it, well, they really hated Luthen. Now, Luthen never needed his intelligence network to grow beyond him and Clea and a few contractors that he worked with. He wasn't actually carrying out a revolution. He was more like a puppet master getting things into place for the revolution. And so Luthen's strategy was to be very careful and quietly wait in the shadows for the perfect moment to strike the Empire, using minimal resources with maximum effort. In many ways, he's acting just like the rule of two Sith did during the Galactic Republic period. It took the Sith, thousands of years to figure out that was the best way to destroy the Jedi and the Republic, and I think Luthen, well, he probably had no other choice. Luthen had to create the conditions for the rebellion to actually be successful, and I think he understood that in the early Empire period, the galaxy wasn't ready. They didn't have a stomach for another war. Even if you managed to collect 1,000 pilots and soldiers, had a fleet as big as the one the rebels used at Scarif, it was ultimately hopeless. I mean, strike out against the Empire using your fleet, the Empire will not only destroy you in that confrontation in a conventional battle, the Empire will also label you as a separatist holdout, or worse, terrorist. Not only will they defeat you on the battlefield, they will turn the entire galaxy against you, so you will not get any recruits, and your people will be ostracized and isolated until they're hunted down and killed one by one. Like Major Partagas always advises the Dedra, don't be impulsive, don't rush things. Make sure you fully prepare before you take your chance, because sometimes you only get one shot. We took a look at the early Empire period. You have a lot of war fatigue from the Clone Wars, obviously, and in a lot of ways, things are moving in the right direction for the galaxy, at least initially. And that's simply because once the war stopped, people started rebuilding and started finding jobs. The economy started, chugging to life again. And in truth, most people didn't really understand the difference between the Republic and the Empire. It just seemed like a rebranding of anything. Remember, most citizens in the galaxy were represented not at the national or planetary level, but at the sector level, which meant that dozens or sometimes even hundreds of inhabited worlds and moons shared the same senator. I mean, they're kind of stretching the whole representative democracy thing at that point. It's a little insane. Luthen understands that in these conditions, he can't really do much, right? He understands what's happening in the peripherals of the Empire because he's a former soldier. He's actually, partaken in massacres, but without proof, without a way to bring this knowledge to the masses, no one will come to his call if he starts a revolution. He needs to create conditions so terrible so that the rebellion finally has the popular support to actually grow large enough so that it won't get trapped or cornered and destroyed. What Luthen is essentially doing here is trying to change the galactic consciousness. It's a very long-term project, and it's very ambitious, but it's exactly what the rebellion needed. And that's why it's only after the Aldhani raid that we see the most relief from Luthen, because that was the point where Luthen finally played his cards after, almost 15 years of waiting. And just a few years later, Luthen gets exactly what he wants. We have Mon Mothma, a well-respected and seasoned politician, one who is willing to compromise on politics but not on morality and ethics, making her an ideal candidate for the job. We have Bail Organa, who is also well-respected in the Senate, and more importantly has years of experience running relief agencies and working in war zones, refugees, delivering aid to the needy all over the galaxy. Skills that translate really well to setting up a logistical system for an entire military force. We also have military veterans, fighter pilots like Antok Merrick and Garvin Dries, who set up the Rebel Starfighter Corps, select platforms like the X-Wing and the U-Wings. An excellent choice, informed by experience. We also have Jando Donna, one of the first Imperial Star Destroyer captains who defected and helped build the Rebel Navy and all of its doctrine, specifically to do what? Counter the Imperial-class Star Destroyer. This is everything Luthen never had. The logistics, the Navy, the Army, all the supplies, stacks. When he needed a Navy, he called the Masase Group. When he needed special forces for a dangerous raid, he called the Partisans. And when he needed operators to conduct even more sensitive operations, he had mercs like Cassian. The sad thing is Luthen definitely has the skill, and I would argue also the temperament and ego, to put himself into a position to lead the rebel military intelligence. But so many years alone has made him Also rightfully paranoid and secretive. He really can't work effectively with a team because that would have gotten him killed in the early Empire period. Surviving for so long has made Luthen extremely deadly and dangerous, and I don't think he understands that about himself. And at the end of the day, the establishment rebels, as I like to call them, they didn't hate Luthen, they're just kind of terrified of him. Now, Luthen is like Lawrence Fishburne's character in Predators. You know, he's been on that godforsaken game roll for too long. You know, he's already learned how to move and smell like the enemy, and he really thinks that's normal. But all the newbies who have freshly arrived to the killing fields, they're like, what the hell is going on with this guy? Like, is that what I'm gonna look like if I stay here for too long?
What the f are you?
General Davits Draven was a military man from the very beginning. I mean, he served in the Grand Army of the Republic. He served alongside the clones. He didn't serve alongside any Jedi general, it's stated. I'm assuming he was more of an analyst. He worked a lot with like Republic strategists in the background, you know, planning operations, you know, looking at the grand campaign map. Kind of very similar to what he does for the rebellion. Now, General Draven develops a relationship during his time in the military with Mon Mothma, who is very much a Republic establishment figure who loves doing things by the books. In this, they are both the same. And as far as espionage and spycraft goes, Mon Mothma just doesn't have the stomach for it, really, and you can't really blame her. She's a politician. I'm sure she's grateful to Luthen, but all the crazy things that Luthen has dragged her through probably put a bad taste in her mouth.
Loris! What are you doing? We found her! And who are you?
ISB agent or not, I almost felt like Cloris was starting to like perk up and listen to Mon Mothma's speech, like he was awakening. I could save him. Davits Draven represents the complete opposite of Luthen. He works within the structure of the Alliance to restore the Republic. Most of the senior leadership in the Alliance to restore the Republic either comes from a military background or were politicians. I think this is a pretty purposeful move. If you've seen my earlier videos about what the Rebel Alliance actually was like on the ground, you'll know that Rebel recruitment standards, for instance, were lax at best. Rebel infantry used to take just about anyone they could find. Sometimes they would even recruit on worlds they newly liberated, taking in many Imperial spies and also criminals. And so discipline and chaos breaking out was a constant worry for the Rebel High Command. I mean, just look at Maya Pei's brigade and Saw Gerrera's partisans. You know, these factions could do a lot of damage to the image of the rebellion. Without a structure, without lateral checks and balances, without a chain of command, without an organization, throughout history, most groups of armed men without proper leadership turns to banditry, or they become terrorists, or they commit war crimes. You know, people joke about the Geneva Convention being drawn up because of what the Canadians did in World War I, but it wasn't necessarily because, you know, the Canadians are more bloodthirsty than we are, or, you know, because they speak that bastardized version of French. It was probably because Canadian troops tended to be slightly less disciplined or orderly compared to other Commonwealth troops. They weren't led by British officers, but by Canadian ones. This also meant they were much more aggressive and very effective fighters, oftentimes deployed as stormtrooper units, as in they stormed trenches. That's where the original name for the stormtroopers comes from. And let me tell you, the Canadians oftentimes volunteered for these type of missions, which is just scary. Like, what? And when they actually carried out those raids, they used weapons that were homemade and honestly a bit too creative and too enthusiastically made. But more importantly, because they were always on the attack, they took a lot of prisoners. And at the same time, because they're one of the smaller nations partaking in this war, they don't really have the logistical support or men to actually take care of said prisoners. I mean, a company of men who have captured another company of men is no longer as combat effective. And the Canadians, well, they hated decreasing their combat effectiveness. Absolutely terrifying. Luthen already understands what it's like to operate by yourself. It's very scary and stressful. Once there were enough people ready to join the rebellion because of the Imperial crackdown following Aldhani, structure became very important. The establishment senators who led the Alliance to restore the Republic didn't want to just survive, they wanted a legitimate and capable military. And while defeating the Empire in some kind of conventional struggle was still far off in the distance, Mon Mothma understood that first she needed to continue this battle of hearts and minds that Luthen started. She needs to awaken the galaxy, and while she's doing that, she has to make sure that rebel troops aren't running around massacring people. The Galactic Empire's Ministry of Enlightenment is just waiting for the rebels to slip up exactly like this. You know, the best way to carry out a military operation that doesn't end up in failure or just a bunch of war crimes is understanding the situation you're going in, having good intel. Intel that isn't just based on one man's ability to read the situation, an individual who might also have their own motivations that run counter to the rebellions. Davits Draven's role here is to just serve as the eyes and ears of the rebellion, just like Luthen, but he's just more predictable, and he works within the system so that his intel can always be vetted and trusted. You got a bunch of Luthens running around with their little lies that are supposed to serve a plan that only they can understand. And the cool thing about Luthen is he gets this. This is why he doesn't go to Yavin. He understands he's not welcomed, and he probably would just make things more complicated. The rebellion wanted a capable intelligence officer who can help provide briefings so that commanders know what exactly they're getting into out in the field. The rebellion didn't really need a shady accelerationist anymore, and there's a huge difference between what military intelligence is and what Luthen's Axis network gets into. Luthen's Axis network has a much more singular purpose and more of a political focus. A good comparison would be to say that the Axis network is similar to the ISB in the same way that the rebel intelligence is similar to Imperial military intelligence. The ISB, like Luthen's network, is far more flexible. It's capable of acting independently and carrying out some pretty consequential operations.
Our cousins in military intelligence have been salivating over our interrogation results and have convinced the Emperor that Dr. Gorst is too valuable to be a one-man ISB asset. I'm counting on you to keep watch on these idiots.
What Partagas is saying here is kind of true. The ISB and Axis Network carry out operations like the Eldani raid and Gorman plan, something that military intelligence just isn't trained for. Davits Draven is more like a simple spymaster whose main job is just to report on the information he collects. I mean, he has the ability to carry out some operations at the tactical level. Mon Mothma and the other leaders are the ones who are actually making the larger operational and strategic decisions, like attacking Scarif. In this way, Davits is just another cog in the rebel army, an important cog that does sit at the top of an entire department who gets his voice heard. But this is kind of what happens when you scale up operations. It's inevitable. I mean, you're going to lose a certain creative touch, you're going to lose a certain efficiency, but you're also going to be able to do bigger, grander, larger things. You also might have enough resources where you can avoid situations like the one Luthen has with Lonnie, where he has to shoot him. Although, to be fair, in Cassian's first operation with the Alliance, he does exactly the same thing to his informant. Now, Davits Draven might seem like your typical robotic military man. He adheres to the rules, he's constantly on Cassian's case, and later on in Rogue One, he also doesn't really seem to trust Jyn Erso either. But he wasn't some boring knob, far from it. The man was actually quite egotistical. It said that he was kind of upset that Jyn got labeled the hero for Scarif for choosing the right course of action when he chose the wrong one. He also hated his enemies very much. He actually fantasized about killing Vader. Heck, he even created something known as the Vader engagement drill, which honestly sounds like a video that a Star Wars YouTuber would make to theorize about how to kill Vader. At its core, the Vader engagement drill is a combat strategy Draven created after studying Vader's raid on the Profundity, where he murdered a bunch of his men. It involves a group of soldiers spreading out and trying to attack Vader from different angles to make blocking more difficult, and also the use of incendiary weapons as well. It's actually a pretty solid plan, and it probably would work against like 95% of Force users, but not against Darth Vader. General Davits would ultimately be choked to death by Darth Vader in a delaying action to save Princess Leia during the horrific Imperial attack on Makota Space Station. General Draven might seem like a very different man from Luthen, but in the end, both are career soldiers who voluntarily made the choice to fight against tyranny, and both individuals sacrifice everything for the cause. Now, I know when Rogue One came out, a lot of fans didn't like Draven, like he's just this moody, kind of sourpuss character, and honestly, in Andor Season 2, he's not that much better, but all throughout history, in conflicts, dark, shadowy individuals like Luthen, like Draven, have stepped up and done things that no one else really wants to do or wants to be known for, and without these individuals, a lot of moments in history would never happen. And so, here's to the dark, shadowy individuals like Luthen, like Draven, who make the rebellion actually work and function. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.